Good evening and welcome to the Hamilton Report. I'm so happy that you are with us tonight. It's July in Oklahoma and surprisingly not nearly as hot as many of us know that July can be. We have a tough topic tonight, and so I'm hopeful that you'll stay with me as we make some points, and I encourage you at any time to jump into the conversation because this is I'm interested to hear what you have to say. But first, I want to play something from the news. This is about a month ago, and the reason I'm playing it, I think you'll understand exactly why after we see it.
State Superintendent Ryan Walters is defending a conservative group that was labeled as extremist by the Southern Poverty Law Center.
The Law Center called that group Moms for Liberty, an anti-government extremist group. Moms for Liberty has 3 chapters in Oklahoma. They have helped lead campaigns to have books they say are inappropriate to be removed from school libraries in the state. Meanwhile, the state superintendent Walters releasing this statement saying it is yet another example of left-wing extremism and their insidious methods of labeling moms engaged in their kids' education as public enemy number 1. The Tulsa Classroom Teachers Association also released a statement saying that Walters' comments are another example of right-wing extremism and their insidious methods of labeling teachers engaged in their job of educating as public enemy number 1.
Well, we know that he attended their conference, Moms for Liberty, in Philadelphia weekend before last. And the kind of bootlicking that he did at that conference was absolutely disgusting, going so far as to saying that that was the most important gathering in Philadelphia since 1776. Well, of course he would think so, because these are people aligned with his vision of education. I said education, not public instruction, because clearly he has demonstrated over and over again that he is not concerned about public education or educating our young people about the truth. Last week in Norman, as I'm sure you've heard, because it was all over not just the local news, but the national and the international news, that he said that the Tulsa Race Massacre should be taught, but we just can't talk about it being a racist incident. If that's not whitewashing history, I don't know what it is. And that is an example of white privilege gone awry. Yes, I said the words white privilege. And every time that we talk about race, whether it's on this broadcast or on the Chairs Daily Live, viewers immediately turn away. And I'm asking that you not do that, because I have something that I want to share with regard to myself. It would be easy for me to say, I'm not a privileged person. I live in a working class neighborhood. There are probably most of my neighbors earn more money than I do. And so what privilege do I have? Well, I have a lot of privileges. For one thing, I can turn on any television or any television program or go to any movie, and I will see myself represented. Maybe not as a gay man, but certainly as a white person. I can go shopping without feeling like I'm being watched the entire time I'm in a store or being followed. Or I could use my credit card without suspicion. These are things that just come naturally, and I don't recognize that as the privilege that it is. But the fact is, we all have privilege, and it's a matter of how we use it that makes a difference. I mentioned Ryan Walters because he is someone of privilege, not just because of his race, but because of his position. And he is using that to bolster his own future, I guess the way that he sees it, while doing harm to people at the same time. And that's the biggest problem with privilege. Now, as I said, we all have privilege, but I want to read this definition, and there are many, many definitions of privilege, but particularly based on race. It's the unquestioned and unearned advantages and entitlements, benefits, and choices that one can have and make based on their race. I heard a wonderful little tale about two fish swimming in the ocean, and they swam up to an older fish, and the older fish said, "How's the water today, boys?" And they looked at each other and they said, "What's water?" When we exist in a situation, we tend not even to realize where we are as we're going through our day. But having a spouse who is of a different race brings great clarity to this for me. When my husband and I go to a restaurant and the waiter comes and says, "How is everything tonight?" It's usually addressed only to me. Or when my spouse asks a question about a menu choice, the waiter directs the answer to me. And I'm quick to point out that I'm not the one that asked the question. And there's usually some embarrassment and, "Oh, I didn't mean anything." Well, maybe you didn't. And I'm guessing probably you didn't at all. But the fact is, that is what happened. And just by virtue of my race, I have a greater status at that table in a restaurant. It doesn't matter if it's a diner or an expensive restaurant where you make reservations and wait for weeks. That's one example. But we are living in a time when I believe all of us have to take stock of the advantages that we have, the positions that we have, and the way that we are perceived by other people. Privilege can certainly be earned. There's no question about that. It can be earned by a job title. It can be earned by education status. It can be earned by doing well in one's career. These are all ways of engaging and earning privilege. And these are also ways that we can benefit other people by using privilege. I'm thinking about my friend Tamaya Cox Toure, who is the executive director of the ACLU of Oklahoma. And she, as a Black woman, will absolutely recognize that she has a privilege because of her education. She's an attorney, and by her position as leading the ACLU, she recognizes that she has privilege. The same could be said for our chair, Alicia Andrews, also a Black woman who is educated and has attained great success in her career and now is serving her third term leading the state party. She recognizes by her accomplishments and by her title that she has privilege. Now, the advantage that those two people have that many of us don't is that they recognize their privilege. I'll be honest with you. I don't walk around thinking of myself as privileged. But when I stop and consider everything around me, I realize that I do have privileges that are simply not afforded to people in other socioeconomic classes, other races, other ethnicities, other religions in our state and in our country. I don't know why we are so reticent to talk about race. I hear, well, they just need to get over it. Well, by saying that alone, that tells you that we are not out of the woods when it comes to racism in our country. And that's why it's a matter of great importance for all of us to recognize the privilege that we have. We have privileges when we go to a doctor's office because we have health care. Other people are not so fortunate. So it's up to those of us who have good quality health care and health coverage to advocate on behalf of those in our state who do not enjoy that same benefit, that same privilege. Or I'll go as far as to say that same basic right that I have, that many of you probably enjoy as well. And education is foremost in my thinking right now. When we apply privilege by a voucher scheme or by tax breaks to people sending their kids to private schools, who are we helping? We're not helping the average Oklahoma family. We're not helping people in rural communities who don't have private school choices. We're helping a very few people by taking part of the burden of private school tuition and paying for that with tax dollars. Now, I read a very disturbing piece over the weekend that there's a group of homeschooling parents who are getting together and they're saying, look, I homeschool my kids. I shouldn't have to pay taxes. I don't have children. I don't have grandchildren. But I want to live in a place where people are educated because my future depends on younger people being smart enough to be able to care for me in my old age. You see, we're past the time now where we can say, I've got mine and pull up the ladder, as clearly the Supreme Court has done. Clarence Thomas most certainly benefited from affirmative action, and yet he's used his privilege by virtue of being a justice on the court to yank that ladder up so that other people coming behind him will not be afforded that same privilege. Whether you like affirmative action or not, you can't argue with the hypocrisy of someone who benefited so greatly because of it, taking it away from thousands or millions of other people. No, we are past that time. If our governor, who is certainly a man of privilege by his wealth, by his race, can be satisfied with the fact that Oklahoma, we made the top 10 in 2 different categories just over the last couple of days. One is Oklahoma is the 6th highest rate for utility costs in the country. We talk about being such a great energy producing state, but what we've done is we've handed the passbook to utility companies to charge us whatever they want. So we are the 6th highest state in the entire country for the price that we pay for energy. That's wrong. It shouldn't be that way. And instead of using his privilege to help other people, he's using his privilege to enrich his friends and the wealthiest among us. If our legislators were concerned about all people in Oklahoma, they would use their privilege as elected individuals to make sure that Oklahoma has clean water. We are now ranked number 3 in the worst tap water in the country. Now think about that. We're not talking about Flint, Michigan here or Jackson, Mississippi. We're talking about the entire state of Oklahoma has the 3rd worst water quality in the country. Where are people using their privilege? They're not using it for everyday Oklahomans. They're not using it for children. Why? Why, when so many kids in our state go to bed hungry at night, not knowing when or if they'll have another meal? Why are we taking away school breakfast and lunch programs? Other states are seeing fit to provide breakfast and lunch to every kid in school from pre-K all the way through high school. Is that a burden? I don't think so. I think it's a responsibility that we have because all of us, regardless of where we stand on the economic spectrum, we are privileged just because of the country that we live in. Now, I know that that's got to be a hard pill to swallow for Black people and brown people and Asian people in this country, because you say, well, I don't have privilege. In fact, we all do just because we live here. This is a really sad statement from Adolphus, who says we can't eat what you fish here if it comes from a river or a lake. Now, something is wrong. We can do better, but it means that we have got to quit using our privileges so selfishly. It means that we have to really get busy and think about how we can put our privilege to use for other people. Maybe we don't give money to everyone we see on the street, but maybe we carry around a piece of paper to hand to people that shows resources that they can access in our communities. Is that too much to ask? I don't think it is, because all of us can do something that costs us nothing but a moment of our time. But let's look at this on a bigger scale. Why is it that Republicans are so focused on the narrow issues that they are and not giving concern to the needs of working class and middle class Americans? Bidenomics is working. We're seeing it work every day, building our economy from the middle out and from the bottom up. The trickle down economics of the Reagan era didn't work then. They haven't worked since, and they most certainly can't work now. And yet that's what Congress is trying to get us back to. Republicans in Congress are beating the hell out of the president every day, saying that it's costing Americans too much. People, we're one of the richest places on the planet. We can afford to treat one another with respect. It doesn't matter where we live. If we live in a manufactured home, if we live in our mom's basement, or if we live in a mansion, we all can do something to positively impact the lives of other people. One of our viewers here, I'm not going to mention her name, but she is joining us tonight. I know the challenges that she has gone through with a family member and health insurance. Why? Why should one person, one family have to struggle so with so much challenge just to get medical coverage? And yet that's what's happening. People are losing their livelihood because they can't afford to go to the doctor. People are losing their homes because they can't afford to work because they're sick. Yes, it's time for us to open our eyes. And I say us, and I'm really pointing the finger at me. I'll be really honest with you, because I recognize that I have privileges that other people do not. But what that means is, with those privileges, I have a greater responsibility. If I am looking out only for me and my family, then that makes me not only a very selfish person, but an immoral person as well. If I focus only on my needs and forget the needs of those around me, then what that says about my character is nothing that I would want on my tombstone. Each of us has the ability, and more importantly, we have the responsibility to put our privilege to work. Okay, what are some real life examples of how we can put privilege to work? One, when you witness a situation where a police officer has pulled over a driver who is Black, pay attention. Use your phone, because how many times have we seen videos of Black people being treated far differently from white people in routine traffic stops? I have never had to have the talk that so many, virtually all of my Black friends have had to have with their children about how to behave around a police officer, about what to do and not do, what to say and not say, just so they can come home at night. Well, one thing we can do is pay attention to those around us. When we're shopping and you see that someone is being targeted in a store just because of their race, say something to the manager. Don't let it be the responsibility of only the person who is under suspicion because of their race, but speak up on their behalf. I'm not suggesting that any of us needs to become a savior, but what we can do is we can become a support for someone else. You know, there was a time when people shared things among neighbors. I'm thinking about cans, food that was canned in the summertime that lasted all winter, that was shared among neighbors like my grandparents had, like my parents had, and even like I have today. But we don't want to share anymore because the government in all of its guises, has taught us to protect what is ours. And that is certainly true of the Republicans in charge of our state legislature, and most certainly in the governor's office. We have people who don't care about children, who don't care about elders, who don't care about the economy right now because they're too busy bragging about the big bloated savings account we have for some rainy day. Well, let me tell you, for a lot of Oklahomans, it's raining right now. It's raining right this minute, and we could do something about it. Teachers are fleeing the classroom because they're not paid enough. We could take some of those billions of dollars and put them into the hands of people who need a raise so that they can take care of their family without also seeking out government benefits. We can choose where we spend our dollars, and we can choose not to spend money with places that don't treat their workers with respect and dignity and offer advances for them, and especially those who don't pay a decent wage. You know, the so-called living wage in Oklahoma is $15 an hour. It's a far cry from our minimum wage. And so how can we expect someone to work 2 or 3 jobs just to put a roof over their heads? It's exhausting. And there's no time to be sick. There's no time for self-care. And there's no time for caring for a family. We have to do better. All of us, each one of us, we have to claim our privilege and own it for what it is. I'm not suggesting that it's a bad thing to have privilege. It just is what it is. But I'm recognizing that I have privilege by the color of my skin. And it's something that at another point in my life I might have denied, but I can't deny it anymore. And why should I? Because it's real. It's very real. And we can do more if we work together. Yes, it's about electing Democrats. That's what we're here to do. But I'm suggesting that there's something else we can do along that way. And that is to pick each other up. We talk about people need to pull themselves up from the bootstraps. Well, if they don't have any boots on in the first place, it makes it really hard to pull oneself up from something that doesn't exist. We can, and we must do better. You know, I talk to folks in rural counties. I talk to folks right here in Oklahoma City and Tulsa, and I hear their struggles, and I listen to what they're going through with their families and their lives. And some of it is horrifying to me, that in 2023, we are still living with some of the same prejudices, some of the same rhetoric, some of the same denial as existed 100 years ago. What is being proposed by our superintendent of public instruction is to whitewash, and I mean that in every sense of the words, whitewash our nation's history. But we cannot move forward until we reckon with our past. It's the same thing if you commit a crime. You have every right to expect to be able to live your life and move forward. But first, you have to reckon with what you did and pay the penalty, pay the price. For all of us, if we look around, but first, if we look deep inside, we can see the privileges that we have. Some of them earned, some of them just because it is the way it is. But however we have gained those privileges, they're ours. We need to own them, and we need to use them to the advantage of other people. There's a wonderful saying that says, when we all do better, we all do better. And that's the truth. Nope, we're not all going to be millionaires. I didn't even buy a lottery ticket for tonight. But we are able to help someone else along the way. That's what Democrats are. We have to, Mark, thank you for this. Some people are scared to look at themselves in the mirror. Yeah, we are. And at times I am, because I don't like what I see. I can change that, but I have to be willing to try. And we all have to be willing to try. I believe in the people of this state. I believe in Democrats especially, that we have the power and the power of privilege to create a better life than what we're existing in here right now. Bad water, high energy prices, failing schools, number 49 in the nation, while our superintendent of public instruction goes and talks to a recognized hate group. Something's got to change. And I believe it can, but we've got to make it change with us first. Friends, I'm grateful that you stayed with me this evening, because I know that this is a hard topic to hear. It's hard for me to talk about. But until we start talking about the hard things, things in general will never get easier for us or for anyone else. So I'm imploring us all, take a look around, see what privilege you have, and how just maybe we can all use our privileges to make life a little better for our friends, our families, and most of all, people that we'll never meet, because we made a difference for one person. Thank you so much for being here this evening. I appreciate you. I appreciate your comments. And I appreciate those of you who share this broadcast so that our word can be shared among other folks, people who also have privilege. And I hope that you will encourage them to use their privilege as well, as we make Oklahoma a better place and our nation, once again, one of which we could all take pride and recognize the privileges and the benefits and the hopes and the dreams of each other. Until next Monday night, I'm Scott J. Hamilton, thanking you for joining us on behalf of all of us at the Oklahoma Democratic Party. Good night.